Hello and welcome to Learn Data. It's great to have you on this channel. I'm Nilesh and in this video we'll continue learning about pandas and GroupBy. Specifically, we'll look at how to select nth row from a dataset using GroupBy. So let's get into Jupyter Notebook and start coding. Here I've already created a new notebook and imported two libraries, NumPy and Pandas. And for dataset, we have the same data frame from previous video and the list date that we are going to use. So the first item that we have also seen in one of the previous videos is how to use the dot head and dot tail to extract data parts of data frame using GroupBy. So usually we would simply type df.head. Let me go back and run this again. Okay, so we can get the first two records using df.head. We can type tail to get the last two records. In doing so, we can use GroupBy. So let's go ahead and create an object, grouped object. G is equal to df.groupBy, and we are going to group on the column fruits. And here let's go ahead and run this. And now if we look at g.head and if we specify 2, then what we are getting is first two rows for each of the groups. So the first group is mango, and for mango we have the first two records at index 0 and 1, whereas the record at index 5 is not there in the final output. So that's how the GroupBy works in this case, along with the head. Similarly, we can use g.tail to get the last two records for each of the groups that we have in the fruits column. Moving on, now let's look at how we can use a very important function, nth. So what this does is we can pick a row from a data frame by specifying either the range, or we can specify just the actual number. So what we can do is we'll go ahead and create a copy of the data frame df, and we'll use just two columns from that, which is q and quantity. And I'm going to create a copy of that. Now for this data frame, as we can see, we let's introduce some n values in here. So df.lock, and first we'll specify the row indices, so say 2, 4, 5 and 7. And then for columns, I'm going to specify the quantity because that's the only column we have here other than q. So quantity, and let's specify this as n. Now when we look at df1, we have these n's introduced here, and they are spaced so that each of the groups, there are two groups in q, which is 1 and 2. So each of them have some amounts of n's in there. Now let's go ahead and create a grouped object. So g is equal to df1.groupBy, and we can specify the q here. So the first nth operation we can do is g.nth a nth open close parenthesis, and within it if we type 0, what we get is the first. So 0 is the first index, first occurrence. So for group 1, 11 is the first, and that's why what we get in the output. Similarly for group 2, we have 2, and that's what we get here in the output. Similar to 0, we can also try g.nth, and here if we specify 1. Now interestingly, as you can see, if this is 0, then this is 1. So for group 1 we have NaN, that's what we get in the output. Similarly for group 2 we have the starting is 2 here, which is at 0, and then 0, then 1 we have NaN, and therefore at one position we get NaN in the output as well. So that's how the 0 and 1 work. Similarly, we can get the last value by specifying -1. So g dot nth, and if we specify -1, then we get the last occurrence. So here the last occurrence for 1 is NaN, and that's what we get. For 2, group 2, we have 4 as the last occurrence. That's what we get in the output. Now in all of these situations that we have seen, the default for drop NA is false, is all. So what I mean by that is this: if we look at g dot nth, and if we look at position 2, for group 1 we have this is a 0, 1 and 2, and so we have 4 in the output. Now for the group 2 we have 0, then 1 and then 2. As you see, we get 9 in the output, and you've noticed that I counted NaN in the counting. So this was 0, then I counted NaN as 1, and then moved to 9 as 2, and that's what we have in the output. And that is because the default setting when we are using the g nth, so g nth 2, here drop NA is set to all, and we get the same output as we see. So if all the values are NaN, then drop that, otherwise do not drop that group. However, if we can change the all to another option, which is any. So if we specify g dot nth 2 drop NA is equal to any, in that case, even if there is one NA in the group, we need to drop that particular record or row. Now with any, if we go back to our data frame and look, we started, so this is 0 for group 1, 0, 1, we cannot count that, then this is 1, and then 2, we cannot count that, 2, we cannot count that, and therefore 1 remains as NaN in the output. Now let's look at the group 2. We have 0, which is this one, then we have 1, so we cannot count that, so this now becomes 1, and then this becomes 2, and therefore we get the 4 in the output for the group 2. So that's how there are differences between using drop NA with any and all, depending upon what is the need of analysis in using that data set. Now, as you've already seen, we can specify -1 to get the last nth record for the group. There is also g dot last. So if we specify g dot last, we get 4 in this case. So if I go back down, let's go back up here and type here instead g dot last. If we specify last, then we get the last value. So for group 1, if we scroll from, we go from bottom up, we see that this is the last value, which is not NaN for group 1, and for group 2 we have 4, which is the last value, and that's what we see in the output. So there is a difference between using -1 and -1 and last. So g dot nth -1, so that's what you would get with nth -1, where the drop in is set to all. and if you set that to any, then we get the same output that we get with the g.last. Finally, let's look at another way we can use this method, where we can specify if we have a grouped object with multiple columns in it, we can specify a column with the grouped object. So g, and here we can specify quantity, and now we can perform the nth. So dot nth, and we can specify 1 drop na is equal to any or all depending upon what is needed, and we get the output that we see here. So again, for quantity column, which we are using a position 1, so 0 and then 1 is nn, so that's why we get nn here. And then for group 2 we have 0 and then 1 is nn, and therefore we get both are nn's in the output. Now moving on, let's look at another scenario where we can use this method to get ranges between dates. So the data frame that we have is this. What we can do is go ahead and add the date column here. So date is equal to date and df. So now we have the date column in here. We can go ahead and create a GroupBy function, a grouped object. So g is equal to df dot GroupBy, and we can group by on date this time. So df, and we are going to get date, and for this first we'll get the year. So just to show you what this part of the code does is it extracts the year from the date. Similarly, if you put month, it extracts the month from the particular date. So we'll specify the year, and then we'll go ahead and specify another group. So df date dot dt and month. So now we are going to group the data frame by using year and month that is derived from the date column. Okay, so that's our grouped object. And if you look at the groups, so g dot groups, we see that we have 3 groups. The year is 2020 in all of them, and that's obvious because we just have that year in the date column. However, for month, we do have 3 months. We have 01, 09 and 12. So January, September and December, and that's what we are going to use to get the nth values. So here now if you type nth, g dot nth, and within open close parentheses we can specify not 1 but 2 values as well. So we can get the first date, the data at the first occurrence and the last occurrence. So 0 will give us the first occurrence for each of those months, and -1 will give the last occurrence. So when we run this, here we can see the year is the same for all of them, but then the dates do vary. So we have two rows for each of the months. So let's look at the month of January. So month of January, we have 3 rows, which are these, and out of those 3, the first one is at index 0 and the last one is at index 2. And although we do not see that index in the output, let's look at the data then. We have A1 10 and B2 12. So we have A1 10 and then we have B2 12. So that's the second one, therefore we cannot see. We are looking at the last one. So we have A1 10 and A1 7. So that's what we see here in the output. Sorry about that. And then similarly, we can look at the last month right here. We have B22 and A213. So we have B22 and A213 in the output. So that's how we can use the nth functionality along with GroupBy to extract very specific information from a data set. This could be either from a series or it could be from a data frame. That was it for this video. In next video, we'll continue learning about more functionalities along with GroupBy. Please like, share, and click the bell icon below this video to subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you.